I have recently returned from attending a ceremony on Earth. This was my first visit since graduating and returning to our home planet. My time in the academy carries with it many cherished memories of mine, such as when I first met Toby Hernandez during my second year of university. I had lofty aspirations then to become a warrior general for Immuni. The military required 4 years of education in a space university, so I chose to enroll in the Star Union Academy. In my second year of education, I was a part of a human Immuni exchange program. I lived briefly on Earth and attended their own academy. My brood parent approved. They told me it would be good to spend some time off planet with aliens. To lessen your attitude and unrealistic expectations, they had snorted. And look at me now. If they were still alive, they would have to eat their own clevel. My human host family were the Hernandezes, a brood of 4, and Toby was in the same academic program as I. I was given the opportunity to learn more about humans than I ever had before. What a fascinating species. They perch horizontally every night to rest. This sleep period lasts for nearly a third of their day, and they are completely unproductive in the meanwhile. They eat orally, consuming dead plant and animal mass regularly, up to 3 meals a day. During that year, my human adoptive family spent nearly all of their time sleeping, eating, digesting, and disposing of the resulting waste. It was quite a miracle they ever managed to get anything else done. Toby also took little white pellets daily, which I came to understand as some sort of human medicine. He had told me, however, that not all humans took the same caplets as him, and that they weren't necessary for every human's survival, only his. He had always looked physically healthy to me, which was confusing. I paid no attention to it at the time though. I was on track to be a military leader after all, not a xenobiologist. Besides, learning about the entire rooms humans dedicated to their nightly unconscious purge was far more fascinating to me. Nearly 33 turns since that first meeting, I was thrilled for my second visit to the planet. As per my invitation, I was going to meet Toby's broodmate Nicholas, or his husband, as humans refer to them, as well as several members of his family. Having spent so long with my own Immuni people, I'm a little rough on all the proper human rituals and did not want to risk upsetting anyone. Humans are emotionally fragile creatures and tend to be easily offended. As a warrior general, strategics and the ins and outs of war come far easier to me than diplomacy or the culture of species other than my own. Thankfully, one of my Immuni brood relatives, Karen, was a former diplomat to Earth. They reminded me of some important human rituals. Of course, we as Immuni are big on offerings, especially to those we haven't met yet. As offering rocks is a tradition of our people, I suggested bringing a rare, fascinating geological formation I had dug up a week prior. Any good Immuni would have been overjoyed. But Karen advised me to instead bring cut-up earth flowers. Either lilies or white roses would have been appropriate for the occasion. Always the overachiever, I purchased both upon arriving on Earth. How unusual, bringing a plant as an offering solely for its aesthetic beauty. There was no obvious functional purpose, as the stems had been cut from their roots and were bound to die in a few days. I have learned to expect incomprehensible, ironic oddities when dealing with humans. I myself have always preferred the steadiness of rock, gemstones, and slate. But if there's anything I have learned from humanity, it is that the impermanent is seen as no less valuable than the everlasting. Finally, the ceremony I had traveled to take part in. The event took place in a large open hall. There was a raised stage with a wooden rectangular box on it and a stunning stained glass pane across the frontmost wall. Its range of colors reminded me of a beautiful bismuth I had recently added to my jewel collection. There were a few other aliens walking about, but most were humans. Many looked similar to Toby, from his curly hair type to his darker skin color. I took a seat on one of the many wooden benches available. Karen informed me that since the invitation didn't specify, I could sit anywhere as long as I wasn't in the front. The seat was a little awkward to fit my wings into, but it didn't seem to be designed for anyone else's comfort either. The human seated next to me explained that this building also doubled as a religious place of worship, called a church. She offered her name, Marie, and said that she had known Toby as a former coworker. My own attachment to Toby was hard to narrow down to one word. I chose to describe him as my friend, my companion, a roommate, and a fellow student. Note: there is an interesting nuance in human language here. Marie was confused that I referred to Toby as a friend or fellow student in the present tense, although I was clearly no longer a student and hadn't talked with Toby in some time. She would have used the terms past student or former companion. I explained to her that the Immuni view every significant relationship as one that lasts for life, no matter its change or ending. If it has had any impact on our lives, we will keep that connection with us forever and always refer to it the same. The actual ceremony itself was quite uneventful. A dark-robed man spoke for quite a while and read passages from a book. After that, several humans and members of Toby's brood gave speeches. His mate Nicholas spoke for an especially long time about the long, impactful glory of Toby's life. I began to miss our own bombastic week-long ceremonies of dances and duels. Karen had informed me of the event's somber nature ahead of time, so I suppose it was to be expected. The Immuni do not hold funerals or ceremonies surrounding death in any aspect. I think if we did, they would be somewhat more active though. We have a way of turning every holiday, no matter how minor, into a grand event. Some might call us partiers. My most notable takeaway from my recent visit, however, occurred after the ceremony's end. As the mate was the host of the party, I made sure to greet him after the ceremony. The husband, Nicholas, and Toby's other brood spent some time talking to all the guests. Understanding my lack of priority, I waited until Nicholas was free and standing by himself outside the church. I then offered him my bouquet of event-appropriate, white flora that Karen had pre-approved. That seemed to brighten his mood. He had been crying profusely throughout the ceremony and his speech. As I understand it, that is a way humans express pain and grief. Why did Toby die? I asked Nicholas, after introducing myself as his mate's academy friend. He had an unusually short lifespan for a human, yes. The man seemed taken aback by the question, but eventually nodded in agreement. The Immuni people are curious by nature, but we are often called blunt by outsiders. As humans say, I learned the hard way during my first couple months on Earth. Thankfully, some humans also find this bluntness funny instead of offensive. Yeah, Toby was too young, he acknowledged quietly. He had just retired from the military. We were gonna travel together. Was an illness the cause? I continued to press on. No, he was fully healthy. Physically, at least. Nicholas paused, lips downturned. The real reason is a little hard to hear. I am Immuni, I reassured him. We do not shy away from honesty. He nodded and swallowed, clearly struggling to speak. If you really want to know, he committed. Note: my universal translator could not comprehend that word initially. It does that sometimes when no word in Immuni can correlate precisely. Death is the closest it could manage. But I already knew that Toby was dead, so that made no sense. Author's name and the link to original text is in the description.